Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're going to be looking at some new cards that are coming out of Blazing Vortex, which is the latest announced set that's coming into the OCG. It's going to be a while before we actually receive it within the TCG. It's usually a few months behind. Please make sure to like the video if you enjoy it, and don't forget to subscribe. Any support is much appreciated for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content. So today the Metalfoes seem to be making an appearance. I can't remember what these cards do, but I think they're fusion based as well as pendulum based anyway. The first card is Metalfoes Melcaster. It's a fire attribute psychic type pendulum effect monster, and its pendulum scale is 1. It's a level 7 with 2000 attack and 2500 defense. The first effect of its pendulum effect is once per turn you can target one other face-up card you control, destroy it, and if you do, set one Metalfoes spell or trap card directly from your deck. And the monster effect is you can only use this card's named monster effect once per turn. If this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add one face-up Metalfoes Pendulum Monster from your extra deck to your hand, except Metalfoes Melcaster, but you cannot activate a card with that name in your pendulum zone for the rest of this turn. So the whole point of this card is it's really meant to recover some of your other pendulum monsters, because when they're destroyed they go to the extra deck. So instead of actually trying to re-pendulum summon them from the extra deck, which according to Master Rule 5, I think you have to pendulum summon them to, if they come from the extra deck, they had to go to the, there's like a sixth, the extra monster zone, not the main monster zone, which is a bit of a pain. So that kind of mitigates that problem. It also means that you do have access to kind of recovery without having to run specific spell or trap support to recover pendulum monsters from the extra deck if you need them. You've got that flexibility. And the other thing is, of course, you're able to directly search using this card as a sacrifice to find a spell or trap card, which is a Metalfoes one from your deck, which means you've got a few restrictions to them. The next card is Metalfoes Vanisher. It's a fire attribute psychic pendulum effect monster. Again, it's a pendulum scale of 1. It's a level 9 with 2900 attack and 1900 defense. The pendulum effect is you can only use this card's name's pendulum effect once per turn. If a monster you control is destroyed by card effect, you can add one Metalfoes card from your graveyard to your hand, except Metalfoes Vanisher. The monster effect is you can only use this card's name's first and second monster effects once per turn each. 1, you can target 2 face-up cards you control, including a Metalfoes card, destroy them, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand. 2, if this card is special summoned by a Metalfoes card effect, you can target one monster your opponent controls, or in their graveyard, and you can banish it. Okay, this is quite an unusual card. The first pendulum effect means that, if your opponent kind of destroys something of yours, that means you can punish them by actually being able to recover another Metalfoes card. That can be just any card. It could be a spell, trap, or monster. So the more your opponent tries to destroy cards, the more actually you get benefit and the fewer resources they have to rely on. Of course, unless they read this card and actually try and target this first. Because when it's in the pendulum scale, it is essentially a continuous spell card. The monster effects are a little bit bizarre, but it does let you special summon this card. The slight problem with this is it does use up 2 of your face-up cards, so it could be a bit of a loss if your opponent's able to chain something to this and get rid of this. And of course, the special summoning of this card triggers its secondary effect, which is able to just banish a card. It can either be on their field or in their graveyard. So depending on what type of setup they're doing, you know what you're really going to aim to target for. Okay, so we now have a new fusion monster as well. It's Metalfoes as Metalfoes. It's a fire psychic fusion pendulum effect monster. This pendulum scale is 8, so it's one of those hybrid pendulum fusions. It's a level 7 with 2,500 attack and 2,000 defense. You can only use this card named Pendulum Effect once per turn. 1. If a face-up Metalfoes card you control is destroyed by a card effect, you can target one face-up card on the field and destroy it. This is quite interesting actually as a pendulum effect because it just, if your opponent doesn't know where this destruction is coming from or doesn't have the ability to respond to this card, each turn essentially you could be destroying their, their monsters or their face-up spell or traps. It has a little bit more flexibility to it. The monster effect is basically to fusion summon it. You need a Metalfoes monster and a fusion monster. You can only use the this card's first monster effect once per turn. 1. If this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can target one card your opponent controls, shuffle 2 face-up pendulum monsters from your extra deck into the main deck, and if you do, destroy that target. And 2. If this card in the monster zone is destroyed, you can place this card in your pendulum zone. So the first part of the effect, shuffling back 2 of your pendulum monsters from the extra deck means that you don't have access to them because they go back into the main deck. And also card destruction isn't always as effective as just straight up banish or send. Many of your opponents might have the ability to kind of protect themselves before that. And the thing is, if you target the wrong card or a card that they're not too bothered about, you've wasted resources just to, bring out this card. The secondary effect of this is also quite good actually, because there are cards where if they're in the monster zone, they can actually get themselves placed into the pendulum zone. So you're able to do these things without having to rely on specific spell or traps, which is always a good thing. So the next card is Heavy Metalfoes Amalgam. It's a fire attribute psychic link. It's a link 2 with 2,000 attack, and its link points are the left and the right. It does require 2 Metalfoes monsters, so it is specific to the archetype. You can only use this card's name's effect once per turn. 1. If this card is sent from the monster zone to the graveyard by card effect, you can activate one of these effects. Target one Metalfoes monster you control, equip this card to that target as an equip spell, and that gives it 1,000 attack. Or 2. Target one Metalfoes card you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon this card. Okay, this is very unusual. Because essentially it can either bring itself back. If it brings itself back to the main zone, it no longer is that viable. In the past, where, with the Link era, it was good because that means you would have 2 spaces to run more extra deck monsters, but now, unless you're running Link monsters, they don't tend to need these extra links to them. Not with Master All 5. The 1,000 attack boost as well is a bit like, you're just basically using an Axe of Despair, which I'm a little confused about why this card is, been introduced. It's not great. And the final card is Metalfoes Fusion. It's a normal spell card. You can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. 1 fusion summon 1 Metalfoes fusion monster from your extra deck, using up to 1 monster each from your hand, field, and or among face-up pendulum monsters in your extra deck as fusion material. So I love this card actually. I think it's really good. It does require that you can only use 1 from each of those areas. So you do need a little bit of setup, unless it has been a longer duel and you've got monsters in some of those areas. At the very least, you'll probably have something in the hand, or among your in the extra deck. How the pendulum monsters like to respond. So it's not going to be too difficult to actually use as an effect. My likening to it is a bit like, I think there's a quick play called Cybernetic Support. It's a card which was used by, say, in Truesdale, but basically if you could half your life points, and you can fuse using like the Banish Zone, Graveyard, Field. You've got access to multiple areas to fuse rather than being limited to, say, directly your hand or directly your field. Or in the case of something like Miracle Fusion, where it's just directly your graveyard, there's a bit more flexibility to it. What do you think of these cards? I'm not familiar with the Metalfoes. As I said, I have seen them and I know what they are, but I haven't got an idea of how effective they are as an archetype. And I don't really have an opinion of how effective these cards are going to be going forward. I can't imagine them being that significant. But it's always nice to have that little bit extra support, especially since Blazing Vortex seems to be quite a legacy support for some of these archetypes. I'm not complaining. I think that's actually quite fantastic what they're doing, but that's just me. Whatever you think, leave a comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.